Cheryl Coleman. I'm one of the DMA online students. And I did not watch any videos prior to this because I wanted to be fresh and not like get any ideas of what you guys have talked about already. So if this is a repetition of what y'all already talked about in yours, I apologize. But these are just my experiences and thoughts on these couple of questions that Professor Adams shared with us. So in terms of the specific moving from a register or timbre into another, I guess the thing that, I'm pretty old school because I'm 56, and so I'm coming from a background, when I was in my master's program like 30 years ago, of where we didn't really talk about this kind of stuff, the acoustic registers and the science, I guess, of it. I mean, there was, we had the pedagogy and we had the different, we talked about resonance and things like that, but there wasn't the spectrograms and none of that technology. So it's all very new to me, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I find it very interesting. But in terms of my experiences with that, I have a very strong mid voice, kind of in that mixed register. And in fact, when I sang roles professionally, I would also sing, I'm soprano technically, so a dramatic soprano, but I would sing, they'd hire me as a mezzo. So I had that really strong kind of mid register, and even low, I could kind of go into, what we call the chest, but I know we don't use that term anymore, but it used to be fairly smooth for me, but as I've aged, what I notice is it's kind of like this real, like there's just it's just a bad spot, kind of like from like the C4 down to, B4, B flat, it's just kind of like, and then it's just kind of like a hard transition now where it used to be a lot smoother. And then, that could just be biologically a lot of stuff that's going on with my body, but that's one kind of thing that I've experienced. Going into kind of the upper register into the whoop timbre from the close. Again, I'm still trying to figure out, like, we used to call it a break when when a female voice would get, to like the F sharp, G, where they kind of go into that quote unquote head voice. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that, but I still, kind of have a little spot like right in there where I've got to, smooth out and be very intentional about placement and just kind of, thinking, opening the space. And I do, when I've taught students, I always talk about modifying the vowel. So I guess that goes with kind of the vowel tracking concept that Bozeman talks about, or, all of the guys in the books talk about. But that's always been helpful for my students. And I've mainly taught like younger students, like elementary through high school, some college, and then some adults from like my church choir and stuff who wanted to take voice lessons. But it's predominantly been younger people, and then just trying to get them to focus on eliminating breathiness in their tone. Again, I was teaching kind of Western classical style singing and not necessarily musical theater, although I did teach some musical theater to some of my students who wanted to audition for various things. And then we talked about, belting and, those kind of strategies. But for like just vowels, what I would use a lot to start with my students kind of in that lower, that close, it would be like the E vowel, because I felt like that was cleaner in terms of just getting the tone, finding that pureness in the tone. And then as they would go up the scale doing the vocal exercises, we'd begin to modify and go to more of an A or ah in the higher register to kind of, get up, into that part where they don't actually crack or, and make it a little bit more smoother. So that's kind of what I've observed in my teaching. I'm so fascinated by the Voce Vista. I've been waiting to get that because she talked about the free trial. So I'm gonna get that this week and start working on that. I want to definitely use that, for the paper that we're going to be doing. But I just think it's fascinating. Like, I want to see what my voice does on that, and just to see where like the different, formants are and stuff. Because I'm not with you guys, the ones who are in class. Obviously, this is all, I'm doing it all remotely. So, but I've really enjoyed watching the lectures and seeing y'all, like Harrison getting up there and singing and seeing, tracking on his, voice and where it would go. And it's just very, very fascinating, very interesting. So I'm excited to kind of dive into that this week and do some of the exercises that we've been assigned. But that's kind of it that I guess I would share. And I think I could help, that will help me to identify kind of some of those areas more specifically, instead of it kind of being rather nebulous, in the past where, I would hear something going on in a student's voice and I'd be like, okay, let's try to modify the vowel or whatever to kind of get past that little rough patch. But now I've got science to back it up and kind of look and see what's going on. So that's kind of cool. But anyway, that's it for me. I look forward to listening and gaining insights from y'all's videos as well. Thanks so much.